Hey guys, so thanks for joining. My name is Andy Parsons. I am a NewSec Solutions Architect covering APJ for Pure Storage. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, but I've recently relocated from Northern California. I worked actually at the headquarters at Pure for about the last 3 and a bit years. And part of that, I was a customer at Facebook managing data center operations, and primarily, actually, we did a lot of VMware deployments globally for IT. So vSAN, NetApp, EMC, and Pure, which brought me over here. And I tend to focus on kind of containers, automation, and virtualization. So I kind of do both topics, and there's a huge amount of content in both topics. I put my GitHub, my Twitter, and my blog link on there. I've got some blogs on just different things. I've been starting to get more active on it, so we can share that later if you have some interest. And I'm going to talk to you guys today about some of the things that are new with Pure Storage and VMware. So we kind of talked about the agenda prior to the call. We're going to talk about vSphere 7, vVols, and vCloud Foundation, and some of the offerings between the two. Now, sort of a big part of the VMware Solutions world, I think, is not necessarily having users assembling things and putting together, but you know, they kind of look at like, how can vendors like Pure work with VMware to build natively products into the platform rather than, you know, having to do a bunch of configurations. So I think it's worth while to sort of talk about some of those enhancements, what's going on. Some of the stuff is probably maybe pre-vSphere 7-ish, and some of the features might be introduced more robustly in vSphere 7, and I'll try to talk about them as well. It should overview everything. And I may miss some things. If you have questions at the end, you know, we'll have some Q&A, and we can take it offline, or I can follow up, because I'm sure I will, hopefully not, but I may miss something. So the first thing I want to talk about is NVMe-OF Fabric. Now, this is old. This was released a long time ago. So let me just kind of go into it a little bit and expand upon it. So, you know, if you start out, NVMe being the bottom of the storage stack, you know, ESXi was sort of, back in the day, was a bottleneck, right? Was sort of the storage bottleneck due to locking mechanisms, how storage was managed and created, how VMs were powered on, stuff like that, how data stores and file systems were configured. VMware didn't really support a lot of concurrency, you know, in the early days, how it was scaled across storage. You know, that's where VAI kind of came in. So they introduced that to allow, you know, more data stores, bigger, faster operations, and it moved the bottleneck. You know, increase the efficiency, stuff like that. Uh-oh, did I just skip a slide? I think I did. No, I didn't. But you never really get rid of that bottleneck. You just kind of move it around. And that's kind of what happened with VAI. You know, and then enter the flash array. You know, we look at flash array, and I'm kind of going back a little bit history-wise, so just bear with me. We'll get into the new stuff. So a flash array volume, we don't have a per volume performance limit. You know, we can give all the performance of the array to a single volume. So, you know, you can have large data stores, lots of data stores, small data stores, sort of your choice. So it opens it up a bit, and it kind of passes the bottleneck back like a hot potato. And you know, then SCSI becomes a bottleneck. You know, the SCSI is designed for spinning disks, and sort of I guess you could somewhat refer to it as a legacy program. And you know, at that bottleneck being at that connectivity layer, you know, so we sort of looked at removing SCSI early on, and you guys may have already seen some presentations similar to this. So I apologize if some of this might be in redundance, but I promise I'll get to an end state here that will make sense for you. Anyway, so we, you know, sort of looked at moving it back like I said, we looked at removing it early on. And this was a few different steps, right? So, you know, originally we started with changing NVRAM to NVMe, and then changing the SSDs into flash modules or direct flash modules, and then adding expansion shelves with NVMe over Fabric backends. So the later X generation arrays had this NVMe over Fabric protocol on the back end for communication between the shelf and the array. So getting rid of SAS and getting rid of SCSI communication between the array and the flash. And that sort of was preparation for what lied ahead, which is, you know, today this NVMe over Fabric or a converged Ethernet, RDMA over converged Ethernet. And this has, you know, been sort of the most recent addition. I think, but not a huge adoption. I think we launched it like a year and a half ago. I remember going to our Accelerate conference in San Francisco, and I was actually building demo infrastructure for Kodi of all people, and we had like the day before the conference, engineering come over and go, oh, we want to put this in one of your racks. So we had to figure out how to shove an NVMe over Fabric shelf and a new controller into this flash stack rack, and kind of scratching our heads going, well, we don't have the RU, something's got to go away. Anyways, so it was, you know, very limited in the beginning, right? We had bare metal Linux support, so not a lot of use cases, right? And, you know, the lion's share of our customers are VMware. So we need to work with partners to, you know, open up who we could use to offer it to. And obviously it made sense to work with VMware. And, you know, NVMe offers the thing, you know, thing about concurrency. You know, if you talk about like SCSI queue depth, you're talking limits of 32 to 64 concurrent IOs. And with NVMe, you're talking about 64,000. So way more scale than SCSI. So it really removes a huge bottleneck, and it really opens things up for down in the future. So I think I went too far. Hang on. Nope, sorry about that. My slide deck was being weird. So we came up with this, you know, NVMe over Fabric for the front end, and originally, you know, or the first iteration is NVMe over Fabric, a software adapter, and a converged Ethernet card that you can install into your ESX host and use NVMe over Fabric on the front end. And, you know, we're able to leverage, you know, some of these faster Ethernet connectivity that we've got today with like Mellanox, where you get 200 to 400 gig connections and stuff like that. So it really sort of opens up the opportunity for a lot larger, bigger data sets. And when you look at it, you know, some people when it first came out, like, oh, this is really complex. It's a new whole environment, and it's you could I don't want to call it iSCSI, but it's very similar in the look and feel is from a configuration standpoint to an iSCSI. So if you think about it in the similarities, we would have, you know, some converged Ethernet adapters. We'd have some initiators. You know, I guess you would say RDMA capable NICs. We'd create some VM kernel ports. We'd bind those to those NICs, and we repeat for each of the NICs. And then, you know, we would create a software adapter just like an iSCSI adapter. And then we would do a discovery. It'd be an NQN discovery, which is a little different from an IQN, but the process is very similar. And these are all things that we sort of work with VMware engineering to build out, so that you have an experience that most people are already somewhat familiar with. The difference being it's a whole lot faster. And this whole process, we've got some solutions, overviews, and some guides on our support page at Pure Storage, and these are all public, so you can view them now. and you know, so we really look at like large I/O concurrent workloads. It performs a lot better, and there's a general, you know, reduced latency about it, and there's a lot coming down the pipe from VMware. So as we get into NVMe over Fabric support, which is now GA in 7, that really kind of lays down the framework for things to come with VMware down the track. And you know, we have a pretty regular cadence with the VMware engineering team and our solutions engineering team building solutions around NVMe over Fabric in VMware, so that, you know, like I said, to kind of go back, this isn't a piece together or cobble together and follow a bunch of instructions. Like, we try to build this to be an easy to deploy, repeatable process that, you know, can achieve some big results. And it's something that we're, you know, obviously it's not perfect out of the gate, but it's from a deployment perspective, but it's something that we add features and solves lots of problems over time. That's one of the big things. The other is path management. Now, path management was actually released in 6.7, sort of a silent release, and then officially launched in update 1. And basically what it does is detect latency imbalances across path, and it will choose the best path for I/O. So, you know, if you look at the why, you know, you look at round robin, when I/Os come in on round robin, and this is how we've always done the default for Pure. In fact, if you go back to the 6.0 days and prior to the plugin doing this, we actually had some PowerShell scripts that would configure all your ESX hosts to use round robin for all the Pure arrays. Now it's done automatically with the vSphere plugin. But what we do is send, you know, if you think about it, we're sending an I/O across each path. Well, if you've got multiple paths, like in an active-active situation, like with active cluster, you know, you might be sending across a higher latency path. So what VMware's done is introduced this latency-based path selection where ESXi can actually measure and look at the latency across the paths and send I/Os down the paths where it's best suited, so you can have a better performance experience. Which obviously that's not new in 7.0. This was something released in 6.7. What is new in 7.0 with Pure is we've made this our default out of the gate. So when you install an array and you connect it to your vSphere environment, vSphere 7 environment, it will automatically detect, when it detects that array, it will automatically set that policy out of the box. Works with vVols, works with VMFS, and works with RDMs. And you can use it in older releases as well, but we set it on the default. And this sort of goes back to that we're trying to build solutions that there's no configuring out of the gate. It's set up the way it should be, so that you don't have to go in and tune and do things like that. And a lot of people look at best practice guides as sort of bug fixes, right? You know, do this or do this, because this is something that we haven't been able to fix or make it be the way it should. And I guess to go again, I'll probably repeat this over and over, but go back to that relationship with Pure and VMware. We're really working tightly with engineering to sort of identify these things and address them, so that you as a customer aren't having to address them. These are just just how it is, and you get the best experience. Interestingly enough, I was actually on a call with engineering, with one of our engineering teams, with a customer here in Australia, going over features with them and trying to figure out, you know, just asking them, you know, what are the things that you're using and how are you using them? How can we better improve them? So it's something that we try to gather from the field to improve that customer experience.
Mm.
Now I'm going to go talk about the vSphere plugin a bit. So obviously we support, HTML5 support for vSphere, which introduced with the client plugin, data store provisioning, snapshot management, environmental configuration, Pure One meta intelligence. And this is I would call it a moving target where we are adding enhancements to it every quarter from a Pure perspective. So this is probably accumulation of the last quarter of things. And we've changed the plugin a bit to add two metrics of capacity full and total busy. And this is information about your arrays. And busy is sort of a metric of front-end workload, data reduction, replication, features that you're using on the array, garbage collection, and the model of the array. And those are all things that were variables in determining that busy capability of the array. One thing worth noting with Pure One, since I think I highlighted that, we're pulling some of that Pure One capability into the VMware plugin so that we can look at, you can return values like if we upgrade this array from an X70 maybe to an X90, you'll be X less busy. This is kind of information that we're pulling into the vSphere plugin from Pure One. And then fleet registration. So this is something that we work with the VMware's Clarity engineers, where you can add an array similar to how you would add an ESX host into vCenter or into a cluster, into that add host wizard. We worked with the engineers and followed the VMware best practices to achieve this. And you can also import these arrays automatically from Pure One with this connectivity. So if you had a fleet of arrays, it's much easier than adding them one by one. And then intelligent provisioning, which is sort of where we allow you to use Pure One metadata, or Pure One meta, excuse me, to make intelligent decisions around provisioning. An example of that might be, looking at a bunch of arrays and provisioning based on what's best suited, maybe load capacity and features. And this is something that we also have in VREALIZE Orchestrator, so you can create workflows and publish those workflows to maybe an operations team. And without an operations team having to have any kind of understanding about your storage architecture or what's the status of the arrays, they can provision, requests for storage based on nothing other than a request for storage, and they can let Pure One make that decision for them. So it really takes away the need for an administrator to do that operation and allow a more, if you've got an operations team to manage those workflows. So it frees up administrators to do more architecting. That's sort of off the script a little bit of what I intended, but that's definitely a value add. Now, the vSphere plugin version 4.3.0 added vSphere 7 support. Now, we have just released 4.3.1, I think, or maybe in the next day or so. So the new features are that we've added are QoS per volume or volume group with IOPS and bandwidth limits, volume group manager, active replication, of course, NVME over fabric support, and it's vSphere 7 supported as well. And how do you install it? Well, it's an easy install from the array, or if you're a PowerShell guy, there's a bunch of PowerShell modules to do it as well. So it's very simple. And I think that lends sort of back to the early days of Pure, where I think our founders' intent was to be able to have an iPhone-like experience, or a simple to use and administer experience. And we try to build our solutions sort of to that spec. So we try to make the VMware solutions as simple to use as possible. So let's talk about vVols. Now, I wasn't planning on digging into the vVols of like all the nuances. I'm just going to talk about the I think some of the updates of it that we're looking at for the new stuff. So if you go back to vVols, if you look back 2 years ago, maybe 2018, we were sort of looking for use cases, getting vendors to kind of buy in. I think 2018 was like the high HCI year, and a lot of people were looking at Nutanix and vSAN probably and stuff like that. So, we were evangelizing it, and it was in early days, right? And in 2019, we really got into the co-engineering and like next level identifying ecosystem gaps for our customers, where vVols fit in, so that granularity of storage architecture. And now we're sort of looking at how to harden and scale these environments. Like, how do you have multi-thousand node VM environments and use vVols? What are the values and what are the benefits? And that's sort of the forward thinking that where we're headed right now. From a pure VMware perspective, we have worked with VMware engineering to do things like, how do we improve enhancing the spec from our part? How do we improve batching or concurrency and reduce serialization so that operations happen faster and are more efficient? And how do we improve the performance of VASA? I think with Purity 536 uses VASA 1.10, which is much faster. And these are some of the things that we're introducing to vVols or working on at the current time, I should say. I think we have lots of customers here in Australia that are using it and using them, and taking some of the feedback from them to improve some of those operations. Then I kind of talked about, from the orchestrator perspective. So we did add enhanced vVol operations into our orchestration workflows, some QoS, and also with VREALIZE orchestrator under VSPHERE 7, we've added FlashBlade support, and Pure One inventory items. So these are things that, so Pure One inventory is, the ability to pull more Pure One data into the orchestrator to make decisions in your workflows, and pulling those metrics from Pure One. I think I forgot to add that we also have added FlashBlade QoS support to that plugin as well. And then Pure One VM Analytics. I'm not sure how much you guys have, how much you're using it or not. So the analytics tool is what sort of brings the topology into our environment. And a lot of our customers really like the analytics tool from for a troubleshooting or latency perspective, where they can look at their VMware state and look at everything from their arrays all the way down to VMs, and look at latency. And I've talked to a ton of customers who find it's super useful for troubleshooting latency in the environment. And I mean, it's sometimes not even related to storage, but being able to see latency on the host and the VM and the data store has really helped them out. And, you know, we've actually got, we've added vVol support to this just recently. You know, so we have, you know, vVols, VMFS, RDMs, vSAN, and NFS support. And so in your ESX estate or your VMware estate, you can look at all platforms. So not just tied to a Pure product, but any array or volumes that are inside of that environment, you can look at all of those. So people find it very helpful, at least the ones that I've spoken to. And with Operations Manager, we've added a management pack so that you don't really have to hack vVols in. It's now a fully supported product in our most recent iteration of 3.0 for VROPS. And you know, this sort of helps so vendor management packs can build their own metrics so they can collect data.
Okay. You guys using VROps? Pradeep, you guys, BNP, are they using VROps?
No, we don't.
No,
we don't.
I see. So if you are not using VROps, you also can use a VM analytics that Andy has mentioned the slide before that, which is pretty good to trace any latency issues here.
Are you guys using the VM analytics in Pure One?
Not at.
This is at zero cost to BNP.
Yeah. So what you do is how it works is you install a collector in your environment that basically it's a read-only collector so it can talk to Pure One, and it will pull this data and push it into our Pure One, and then you can look at metrics on your VMware state. So any vSphere cluster. So if you had multiple, you could install a collector per cluster. It's just a lightweight VM. And like you said, it's free to use. So there's no cost to you. It takes probably half an hour to deploy it. And you can collect data right away. And I think we store it free of charge for like a week, maybe 2 weeks. So yeah, super helpful.
Yes. You can find out where's the latency at the host, the VM, the data store, or on which particular arrays, or which volumes on the array.
The Pure Storage vSphere plugin, is it freely available or is it license-based?
Absolutely, it is freely available.
Free, zero cost, the plugin.
Yeah, so you can install it either from the array or from a PowerShell script on your, from PowerShell. So that really gives you a ton of management options. I would say probably so I manage the data center here in Singapore, and one of the things that I find the most useful, and this is probably because it's a lab environment, and we have lots of SCs and people just kind of jumping in and creating stuff. They want to create a demo and whatnot, is the capability of being able to do cleanup and management from the vSphere console from a storage perspective. So like I tend to have a lot of engineers or salespeople that will go, oh, here's how easy it is to create a volume. And they'll go through the whole process, create a volume, create a snapshot. And then I end up with like 500 volumes on an ESX host. And they're only presented to one host because the guy wanted to just show that feature, right? So I got to do cleanup. Well, the cool thing about the tool is that you can actually go into vSphere. You can right-click on a volume and say, oh, I want to delete that volume. It will disconnect the volume. It will unmount the volume, it will delete the volume, and it will rescan the host all automatically. So normally you would have that be like a couple step process, and you know how you always do it, and you're like, oh, I forgot to do this one process, and now it's showing it's disconnected. So it's like a one-click operation to remove or add a volume, and you don't have to there's not all these other nuances. So it's super handy. So you don't have to go into the array to create any of that connectivity. So, And it also ties into Operations Manager as well. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. CHEC will be happy to walk you through installing that plugin.
Yep, sure. Actually, we've done that. VM Analytics, right? Or vSphere. Sorry.
Okay.
You say vSphere plugin. I think both lah. We can help them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this also ties to the organization of our company. You know, right now, the ESX is managed by one team and Pure is managed by us. So with this plugin, I think we need to see the, you know, the risk of let the ESX, I mean, manage the storage.
Or every co-manage. Yeah, co-manage together.
Co-manage,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Pradeep, on the IV2 platform, do we install any plugin of the Pure Storage onto the ESX?
At this moment, no, Stephen. So, but we had a check with the global regarding the Pure One plugin to send the data collected from the VMware to the Pure, so that we can track down the performance KPIs as well as the end-to-end connectivity or end-to-end mapping. So they said, in global they are not doing that, but they are not against doing that in APAC. So the only time is factor limiting us is the time. So probably I and Chida need to work together to get that done. So all the IOPS related information can be hosted in one single place, and both the virtualization team as well as us can take a look at regular intervals and see how that's happening.
Okay, got it. But at the same time, assuming the main purpose for us is to, get an end-to-end performance information easily, are we able to deploy something that, considered as a read-only without making changes?
This is
absolutely.
Basically a read-only. Yeah, this is absolutely a read-only.
Yeah, this is a read-only. So
I see. Okay, then I think that's a lot safer. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it would. Yep. Nope. You will not have that issue.
Yep.
And you can also there's a plugin for iPhone and Android, so you can view it from a phone as well.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool feature, right? For the managers to view that the capacity, the performance, everything. Maybe during analyzing a performance impact or something like that.
Right, and that's read-only too. Yeah.
Chida, that's work on that, Chidanand.
Noted.
Cool.
Sure.
Okay.
Cool. Glad we can help. All right, moving on. We'll talk about VCF a little bit. I think probably initially it's worth having a discussion about VVD. So when you talk about VMware Value Design, I know personally that Pure was the first storage vendor to have this certification from a partner architecture, because I built the architecture in the lab when I was in headquarters. So we certified with 4.0 and then 5.0, and it really is a process of taking the VMware architecture. I mean, it's a reference architecture, the VVD, right? So it really speaks to the management and the storage and compute and management, network and storage. And we did it on a flash stack, so kind of an end-to-end solution and how you built everything. But it's not automated. None of it is. It's very manual, that process. They have like a bit of an automation from getting the configuration variables, but not from the automation. And that's sort of where vCloud Foundation comes in. It takes that design and automatically builds it. That's the magic, right? So we're sort of leveraging a bit back to the VVD that we've built and designed for our partners and customers to sell, and using that as our reference. And so we've added that base approach. And it provides that single pane of glass, automatic deployment, lifecycle management, and it now supports both vSAN and third-party storage. So it is divided into a management domain and workload domains. So you have a management domain and then a vSphere for each one of your workload domains. It's with a storage architecture like Pure, obviously, you know, I keep using that word obviously, it's a bad habit. You know, storage hardware is shared, it can be moved around on demand. In previous iterations, you know, if you looked at like a VDI workload domain or a database or a consolidated VSI workload domain, every one of those being a vSAN cluster, for example, to move one of those hosts, you have to dehydrate that host and reduce the capacity of storage to move those workloads over. And it's very difficult. There's a lot of kind of moving parts in there. With using a disaggregated architecture model, you know, we can offer that full array performance to the workload and make it modular. So you're not, you know, by decoupling it, you're not trapped with like that having unused storage or compute for that matter, which makes it a lot more flexible. And you know, originally when vCloud Foundation came out, it was vSAN only, right? And then they added NFS and VMFS, and we're working with them to add vVols to that as well. So we'll leverage the full features of vVols, and that will give us the ability to be able to move those workloads to on-prem, to public cloud, especially with the vVol capability. That may not be something that would apply to you guys, but that's sort of one of the benefits. And this really, you know, being